Hey everybody, this is Andrew Greer, and we have a special holiday edition of CCM Magazine's Features on Film with our buddy Mark Schultz.
Hello.
Schultz. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so Christmas time, which this is, I do want to focus in this conversation because it's December,
Right.
On Christmas time. But talk about your household now. We were just talking about how you got married at 35-ish.
35, yes, that's right.
Had started having kids when you were 40.
40.
So your kids are still young,
Yes,
right?
5, 3, and 1.
Right. So Christmas is
A blur? I don't know. It seems like this. There was a season where you would put up a Christmas tree and you would just look at it. That's what I did for a long time. And reflect on it. Those days are past. So what happens now, right, we actually, every year now, we have to put up a fence around the tree because it just gets yanked on, pulled over. Those expensive, you know, when somebody's like, I want to gift you with this Christmas.
The glass.
Yes. Yeah, we don't have any of those anymore. Those are busted all over the house. So we really did. We had to make a moat between the tree and just for people to get. It seems like we've always got a 1-year-old running around the house.
Yeah. You can stop that.
To that. Yeah.
Was it
our fault?
Yeah, that's right. Growing up, what kind of experience was Christmas for you growing up? It's different for everybody.
Yeah,
you know?
I think for me, I come from we have an older brother, younger sister, and then we have a bunch of cousins. So for me, it was going to my grandma and grandpa's house and staying in the basement. You know that song, John Denver song? Why is this popping in my head? About grandma's feather bed. It was 9 feet high, whatever. Why? I just remember everybody just piling into the beds downstairs in the basement. There was not enough beds for everybody. We were all packed in there. But when you're younger and you've got all these older cousins, they are like heroes forever, and still to this day for me. And they farm, but in my mind, they're just giants. They're that's what I grew up with, and heroes to me. And so that's what I think about it.
Do you still try to cultivate some of that kind of? It's a very communal Christmas experience for your own kids, or does it look different? You know, your wife's dynamic.
Well, that's great. That's a great point. So when when you're married, you take your stuff and you mix it in with what her family does, and you mix that together and come up with your own thing. And so it probably takes, since we live right next door to my mother-in-law, my choice, which isn't that's not for everybody. But since we live so close, it really starts to take on and they do Christmas well. They really give great gifts. They think about gifts. My mother-in-law and that whole side they think about gifts all year long, and they write out a big a poem or a story, and you open it and you're crying because you've always wanted this, all that kind of stuff. And, my family, the night before, goes to the Dollar General and just, gets whatever and just throws it into a sack. It's just like, so it's very thoughtful, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about, and you've talked a lot about your adoption story and your adopted family. Was there ever an association for you as you matured in your spirituality and your faith and your knowledge about God and Jesus and the aspect of the Christmas story that we celebrate as Christians, being adopted, were there any parallels there you felt like, or was there a closer identification with Jesus? Because you think about Jesus being birthed in this family with Mary and Joseph, but in a sense, they were sort of his adoptive family.
Yeah, that's right. I think for me, I've had such a great experience, and we've talked about that being adopted, that I always say it's not a big jump for me to say, oh, we could be adopted by God, because I had such a great godly family that I just go, oh man, this is what family looks like. And so that's not true for everybody, but for me, that jump off point is not. I maybe get that more than other people do because I've lived it, still, the thing for me growing up with my mom and dad is to say, man, I want you to be proud of me. I just want to do something so you would never say, man, did we make a wrong choice there or whatever? And but they've never made me feel like, hey, you have to do this or else they just like, you can't. There's nothing you can do to make us love you more. There's nothing you can do to make us love you less. And that's a great echo of just what God has said. There's nothing you can do, and it's all in adoption. And so there's something very freeing and very real for me to go, oh, I know what that feels like, because I've been trying to do that my whole life. I've tried to overachieve my whole life. I try to be I'm the quarterback in the football team, or I'm singing, and then it's a record deal, and then it's do shows and all that kind of stuff. And in a way, there's a certain sense of me going, am I good enough yet? Am I good enough to? And there's probably folks. I know there's folks that live like that in their faith and Christian. God, I just got to do more. I've got to do more. And it's a great place when I got to say, oh, you don't have to do more. You don't have to do any more. You can't. There's no more or no less. It's just being right where you are, and that's the right place.
Jesus, I feel like, is God's response to our question to Him. Can I do more? What do I need to do to be approved? And
right.
There's the song that you wrote with our good friend Cindy Morgan a few years ago called
Who is the best? Cindy
Yes.
Morgan.
I agree. We can take a pause.
We can take a pause. She is so great.
Yeah, phenomenal human being, and literally from a wordsmith standpoint and melodies. I mean, she just knows how to take our experiences. I sit in a room with her and say, I didn't really write that song. She's like, well, yeah, you did. It's all your ideas. You told me that. No, but so you understand.
Yeah.
So actually, we're talking about a song that Cindy Morgan wrote called "What a Different Kind of Christmas." No, I'm just kidding. Mark Schultz and Cindy Morgan, but has become a real. I mean, surprisingly so. The success of the song, because the content of the song was birthed from a sad experience, right?
Yeah, real life. So, like I say, we moved in next to my in-laws, and then, like 6 months later, my father, our first son, was born. He got to hold him, but he got then my father-in-law got cancer and died 6 months later, and so that was in August, and Christmas rolled around, and I remember I was in my office and I'm writing some songs, and my wife walks in to the office. Now let me stop the story right here as she's walking in with the Christmas stuff, and say, growing up next door. Her dad was a great man. Now, he wasn't a man that would say, hey, I love you, and vocal. If he loved you, he would do things for you, and he would show you by the gifts, and he would show you by starting your car when you're not up yet and letting it run when it's icy outside, and do your window and the whole thing, so when you get out there, it's all ready to go. So he would do those things. But at Christmas time, ever since my wife was young, she and her dad would go to the Christmas Eve, put the cookies and the milk by the fireplace, and then the next morning she would run there, and the milk and cookies would be gone, and there would be a note from Santa written in his left hand. And it would say, hey, I came down the chimney last night and I ran into your dad. And he told me you're about the greatest thing that's ever happened to him. Gets me. And he thinks you're great and loves you so much. And he's so proud of, what you've done here in school and all your activities and all that kind of stuff. I hope you have a great Christmas. Love, Santa. And so every year she loved, even when she was in college, she loved leaving the notes, for Santa Claus to see what he would have to say. Even when we got married, the notes changed. They'd be like, hey, your dad thinks you're the greatest thing in the world. I bumped into him last night. Your husband needs to learn how to fix some things around the house, but he's okay too.
It's all going to work out.
Yeah, it's all going to work out. And so that was Christmas for her. And then when her dad passed away, there were no, that all changed. And she walks into the office and she said, you know what? We've got the same tinsel. We've got the same lights. We've got the same decorations for the tree. And it's a different kind of Christmas this year because Daddy's gone. So I said, that's the song. So I started writing different kind of Christmas. And out of that experience about the legacy that somebody leaves when they're gone, you can't replace it. You can only pass it down. And that's the whole theme behind that song.
It's interesting that, when you think about, again, the success just being kind of a tangible expression of how it resonates with people, and yet it's kind of the antithesis in some ways of it's a holly jolly Christmas or whatever. It really is. It's willingly exploring the aspects of Christmas that I think are reality for most people who've lived any aspect of life. It doesn't mean necessarily that everyone's sitting in a depressed stupor and whatever all Christmas long, and that they don't even still find the points of light in it.
Sure.
But why is it that Christmas can be, for so many, we hear it over and over, and we've experienced it sometimes in our lives, can be such a strangely,
Yeah, and well, number one, I would say, and you know this from songwriting, that if you could say, "Hey, I'm going to go write a hit," you try to think, "Oh, what would be sound good," and all this kind of stuff, and they fall off the table. But if you write something that's real and resonates with you, I've always found my first record. I thought the only people that are going to buy my record are the people at the church, because I've written all the songs about the people at the church, and then I realized everything I was writing about these folks happens at every other church.
Yeah, translated.
It translates. So this was a direct translation of the heaviness, and we hadn't experienced so much of that. We hadn't experienced a Christmas with losing both my folks are here and everything. So there was a literal hole in the middle of Christmas that first year where you were, a lot of it, we were kind of like faking our way through being happy and joyful, because the thing that Christmas was built around, at least in our the person who loved Christmas more than anybody else was gone, and so we were doing all the same stuff, but it just had this sinking feeling to it, like it's just not happening. And so that happened for a couple of years, where you kind of just, until you realize, and what happens in that song is, I look at my kids and I just was so wrapped up into this. Christmas isn't like it used to be. It's not, we're missing everything. And then my kids came into the picture, and at the end of that song, it talks about, hey, instead of trying to live in the past and what we don't have anymore, man, you left a huge legacy for us. So as kids, you pass that down to us. Man, my job now is to pass that down to my kids. And so I think getting out of ourselves and thinking, not what am I missing and what am I not getting anymore, it's, what can I give, And so we reflected that back on the kids, and now they'll grow up having those same legacies passed through us. And that to me is the hope, that's the joy in that. But it's a door we all have to walk through at some point in time, is the loss, that the thing that changes. And Christmas, I will also say this, it's an amplifier. So whatever you feel, you're looking through a microscope, and it just brings everything up for those few days.
High or low, right?
And I will say this, that song, we CBN, I think they did a thing, said, hey, give us 2 songs, play 2 songs. We're going to play something for our newscasts as we come in and out. And I did Different Kind of Christmas and another one. The other one wasn't that good, but they chose it. And they said, we don't need Different Kind of Christmas. You can do it. And I was like, what do we do with it? And I asked my wife, and she was like, well, you could put it on Facebook. And I said, okay. So usually if like 50,000 people say, hey, nice job, or hey, that was cool, or wow, look how you got frosting on your nose when you hit the cupcake. I don't know, whatever they And we put that in, and the next morning I checked it, and like 500,000 people had watched that thing. And then that was 10 days out before Christmas. It got 1 million views every day up to Christmas, and became like the number 1 or number 2 selling song that Christmas. And then it did the same thing, got 20 million views the next year, and became the same thing. And as we're watching that thing explode on the internet, it was such a drastic difference. There was no, hey, here's the plan. We're going to follow the plan. It's the marketing plan, and we're going to do all that kind of stuff. And a lot of times I think maybe God works in that way, where he just goes, give me the one that got rejected. Give me the one that they didn't take, and they just were like, okay, and don't even, just put it out there, Put it out there, and then it does this thing, and it grows. And so you just kind of watch it, and what I realize is that song wasn't meant to, hey, serve my career. That song was meant to serve people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it went out and found people that were walking through that, and they could say, man, that's me. That's me this Christmas. And it's just something, and I think a lot of it is people can say, hey, I don't feel so alone. And what I mean about being under a microscope at Christmas time, if you would put that song out before Thanksgiving, it would have this many views.
Right.
But what I mean about the microscope is the holidays, and it's family, and it's the sense that there should be fun going on, and there should be all this going on, and it's the microscope of, man, I feel some things in here, and it just, and that's why that song I think blows up around then, because it speaks to something that everything's under a microscope at Christmas.
And so relatable. I mean, I think God's presence is so poignant in our pain, and not to dwell on or in the pain, but to be willing to be aware of it, and how God is so. I mean, I think that's, again, the picture of Jesus. Come back to Christmas from a spiritual perspective. It's like, that's God saying, I identify directly. I want to, and maybe he didn't before. I don't know. That's very good. But saying, I want to identify directly with your pain, which then changes all at Christmas. We have all this tradition, and we have the lights, and we have everything, and I love it personally. So I'm not, diminishing that aspect of it. the holly jolly thing. But it is interesting that when we start to look more at like Advent, which is what it sounds like you guys began to do and are now doing with your kids through the loss of, your father-in-law.
Yeah, and I think also, I think it's just healthy to say, hey, Christmas time, and here's everything that's going on. I think it's not healthy to go, we're not talking about that. We're not gonna.
Right.
We're gonna shut
Right.
that door. We're only gonna.
Right.
We're only gonna play with the happy stuff.
Right.
And this will just keep,
Festering and
the whole thing. So I think it's healthy to invite that in and sit with it for a while, but not let it be your whole thing. But just that's just part of what this Christmas is about. And so I think it's healthy.